Hey, what's up, everyone? How's it going today? Welcome to the Normal America Show. It is November 10th, 2020. I know that because the bottom of my computer tells me. So, how's everyone doing today? I'm having a fantastic day. So, the election saga continues. We'll be talking about that. I got to be honest, I was very busy last night, so I didn't prepare the show as well as I normally do, but that's okay. But I have an idea of what I want to do tonight or today on the show. So, and the theme of today's show is positivity. I think that I probably owe some people an apology as far as maybe going after them a little too hard. So I'll explain why I do that, what that's about, and then we'll talk about. We're not going to be negative Nancy's today. What's up, Ramon? We'll talk about some positive things that are going on in the context of the election and elsewhere, and maybe some areas that we could work on. That's what I was trying to do here last week and yesterday, but maybe in a more positive light, things that we could work on. So, yeah, that's what we'll do the show, and then I'm sure we'll have conversations in the chat that'll take us wherever. So, you can find me on YouTube. Normal America with Rob Noor, D Live. I'm just Normal America. Twitch, Normal America with Rob Noor. I'm also on Periscope and podcast, which live on Podbean right now, which is audio only, but you'll be able to find me on Spotify, iTunes, and other platforms after I upload that every day. So if you're driving to work or something, you can't watch the video and just want to hear it, I'll be there. The only problem with Podbean, it's a workaround I'm trying to figure out. It's hard to take call-ins with Podbean. The rest of the platform I could take, but Podbean right now you have to run straight through it. So probably no call-ins on these morning shows until I figure that out. But, all right. So let me explain why I appear to be a negative person. It's something that I need to do a better job imparting exactly what my feelings are, exactly why I think the way I do. So I'm the type of person that deals better with harsh criticism. So when I was debating, my debate partner, fantastic guy, he was the type of person that you could be honest with and be like, yeah, we need to work on X, Y, and Z, and that was fine. I was the type of person that needed to be told, you're a dumbass. What the hell did you do? Like, that was good for me. That's what motivated me. And that's just the way I've been my whole life. I'm a harsh critic of myself. The harsher I am of myself, the better I end up doing. And, I remember one time growing up, something stupid happened. I don't know. Me and the neighbor kids did something, and my dad was furious with me, and it's like I was grounded for like a month or something. And then he was like chumming it up with the neighbor kids who did, the same thing with me. And I remember asking him, like, excuse me. I was like, well, why are you mad at me and not them? And he was like, because you're mine. That's why. And that's how I feel with Trump supporters and with patriots. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm unfairly harsh on them. And the reason is because those are my people. Those are the people I trust. I expect, and I'm not trying to talk crap on Biden supporters. I've already told you my feelings. I think most of them are good people. They're just misled, in my opinion. I think we should, to some extent, reach out, which I'll explain exactly what I mean about that later. But, I expect them to be misled. I expect them to be ignorant. I expect them to make bad choices. That's why they're voting Democrat. It's when it's people that you respect, when you feel that they're making mistakes that, what's up, Brady? That's when you get most upset. So I do apologize if I was unduly harsh on anyone. I stand by everything I said. I'm not backing, but the tone of which I say it could be better. So that's where it's coming from. For me, I forget that not everyone's motivated in the same type of way I am. So I'm like, how would I want someone to motivate me if they thought I screwed up? Like, they would give me the business, but that's not the way it is for everyone else. So I do apologize for that. If I upset anyone being too harsh, I hope not. But there are a few people in particular whose, screen names I shouted out that maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe that wasn't the best thing. Other signs for optimism. I keep saying that the most important thing in life is your personal behavior, your personal actions. Sometimes, hey, thanks, Ramon. Ramon says, Rob, don't change your message because people are getting triggered by the truth about the corrupt establishment. R Noel. Right. We need to hear this even if it stinks. Yeah, I agree, and I'm not going to change my message. But I don't have to yell and scream as much, I think. I could be a little calmer. I'll yell when I feel like it, but that's all I'm saying. But thank you, Ramon. As always, thanks so much for being here. But I talk about the importance of you and your family life and things, what can you personally do? Sometimes it takes a loss like we're probably going to see to focus the importance on your own life, which is the most important thing. So I'll just give you an example. Like, the election stuff sucks. It sucks what's going on. Yesterday, I lost one of my dogs for a while, and all of a sudden, everything was put in perspective where it was like, my personal life's very important, and I found the dog, by the way. She's fine. But I did lose her for an hour, so that was scary for me. But all of a sudden, I wasn't paying much attention to the election, Now, I'm not saying that the election's not important then, but what I'm saying is it helped me focus on, what I do is important. That's what's important. So, there's a lot of positives that you can take out of that, just focusing on yourself, your situation, how to improve your family, how to improve yourself, how to improve your community, and branch out from there. Jordan Peterson talks about that a lot. Before we can solve the big problems, we have to solve our lives. That's what he's like, clean your room. That's great advice, because the idea is, who am I to go out and say, oh, this is what we need to do to solve the world if my life's a mess? Not that my life's a mess, but... So, now, I guess the big question, where do I think we stand on the chance of the court overruling this? Now, let me be clear. I still don't think that it will be overruled. I don't. But it's not because I don't believe there's fraud. Right? Well, thank you, Brady. Yeah, there is a video up. I spent about 13 years in home healthcare field working with people with developmental disabilities. I have a video up on that if you would like to see that, just my thoughts on the industry. It's about an hour long. But that's on my YouTube channel. So I think if you just search healthcare, you'll find that. But thank you. I enjoyed doing that video. So, excuse me. I got this nagging cough. COVID? No, I don't think so. But, we'll talk about COVID a little today, too. So I want to make it clear. My reasoning for saying I don't think this will be overturned is not saying that I don't think there was fraud. I do. It's not me saying that Trump shouldn't fight it. He should. And we should all bring attention to as much fraud as we can. So don't mistake. I just think that the establishment is so corrupt that it will have impacted the courts as well. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I was right about the election, though. I was right about them stealing the election. But maybe I'm wrong about the courts. I hope so. I would love to eat crow. I absolutely would. I would love to come on here and say, wow, I was completely wrong. That's fine by me. I'm not the type of person that's like, yes, I was personally right. That's some sort of victory. I want the country to do well. And the best thing for the country would be Trump winning. And I hope the courts overturn it. I don't think it'll happen because of corruption. And it helps me prepare what is the next step moving forward if the courts don't act. If I just sit back and say, yeah, the courts will solve all of this, I'm less motivated to come up with a plan on what to do moving forward. So, whose username is it anyway? Says, do you really think if they found fraud, it'd be millions of votes in 5 different states? Well, it wouldn't need to be millions, but that's a great point. And that's a point that I've made. Whose username? Let's say they find, I don't know what the final tally will be, but let's say Trump loses Pennsylvania by 70,000 votes, and they find 60,000 examples in Pennsylvania of voter fraud. I don't know what the court does at that point. Now, I think anyone with common sense would say, well, if you found 60,000 examples of voter fraud, no doubt there was more than that. And so that proves that they basically stole the election, stole that state from Trump. But I don't know that the courts could do that. They could probably only throw out the examples that they find. And the thing about cheating in an election is it's tough. I think they probably cheated in a host of ways. printing out ballots, digitally changing them, all sorts of ways. Are you going to find every way in every area enough to, I don't know. Now, if there's substantial fraud, it should prove to Americans, look, the Democrats cheated to steal this election. I don't want to hear, oh, they only cheated 50,000 votes in Pennsylvania, so no big deal. Ridiculous. And that alone would prove the need that we need to have a more secure election moving forward. But I don't disagree with the premise of your question, whose username. I don't. Well, and you say, well, good luck with that. I doubt it'll even be 10,000, much less enough to overturn. We were told there was no fraud. Remember that? Mail-in fraud? What fraud? There's no fraud. We kept showing cases. Here's the fraud. Here's the fraud. Here's someone that was arrested. What fraud? Now we have the election official in Georgia came out yesterday and was like, of course there will be fraud. We just don't think it'll be that much. Oh, so the fraud exists. You're talking about Georgia potentially being decided by 2,000 votes. And now all of a sudden everyone's like, well, of course fraud exists. So you didn't do anything to eliminate that fraud? You're just willing to accept it? I mean, this is kind of one of the things that upsets me about the people that control our narrative and their double standards. They're duplicitous to you. They're disingenuous. They lie to you. There is no fraud. There is no fraud. As soon as you start to prove something, they're like, well, of course there's fraud. It's just not that bad. And then if you prove there's a substantial amount, they'll say, well, of course there's substantial fraud, but it wasn't enough to overturn. They're constantly moving the goalpost. Constantly. Like, for example, I can't remember his name, but there was a blue checkmark like media person, I think maybe from the Washington Post. He tweets out yesterday or the day, I think maybe the day before, he tweets out, why is DC still boarded up? We won. What does that mean? Think of what that statement means. What he's basically saying is, I know that it was Biden voters that were going to riot. Now that we won, no riot, right? Now the media, they all lied to us. They said, oh, Trump supporters will riot, blah, 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 blah. Right? That's what they said. And then as soon as they perceived the election as being over, the mask slipped. And I'll get to another example regarding COVID on that. So, whose username anyway says, I never moved the goalpost. Stop arguing what someone else said to me. I'll talk about whatever I want in my show, and I'm talking about Democrats. I hate to break this to you, but in the grand scheme of things, you're not very important. I'm talking about the people that control the narrative, like the Democratic politicians and the media. But nice that you have so much importance on yourself. So you agree fraud existed, then whose username? You just think it won't be in the tens of thousands? So you were okay with an unsecure election? That's what you were okay with? Let's see. I'm reading the chat here. Right, I agree, Epic. He says, establishment will have a commission to secure the integrity of the electoral process. It will only secure their ability to cheat. Exactly. Night Strawman, never said I was okay with it, but inevitably there's going to be fraud, but not to the degree you think it does. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. We all knew that there's going to be fraud. We all knew it. It's just the Democrat Party and the media said, fraud's in plot. What? Fraud? No, fraud doesn't happen. That's what they said. That's the point, whose username. I understand you want to deflect by saying, well, that's a straw man. That's not what I said. It doesn't matter what you said. What matters is what the Democrat officials that actually could be involved in setting up the process of how elections take place and the media said. Then he says, I assume that fraud is only attempted or done against the Republicans. So far, the only charges brought to someone was a Republican lady in North Carolina taking Trump's advice to try to vote twice. Of course, there'll be small amounts of fraud on the other side. Again, a reason that we should have a process set up with voter ID to make sure that we can't do these mail-in votes, that they're more ripe for fraud. That would be a reason for it. But we see that all the examples that we're seeing that are very questionable all lean the same way. Were there 6,000 votes, a glitch sending 6,000 votes from Biden to Trump? Nope, didn't see that. Did Republican areas stop counting in the middle of the night and then find hundreds of thousands of ballots almost exclusively for Trump? Nope, didn't see that. Were there accusations of Republican places where they were keeping Democrat pollsters out? Nope, didn't see that. Whose username? This is the last I'll respond to you, whose username. Whose username says, you say I want to deflect while you argue against a point I never made about moving goalposts. I'm not talking about you. My show is not just me talking to whose username. I'm saying that you know that fraud exists. The Democratic Party also knew that. So shame on the Democratic Party for pretending fraud doesn't exist. I don't care about your delicate sensibilities. And if you can't handle it, if you need to keep saying, but why are you talking about stuff? Isn't the show you just talking to me? No, it's not. I understand. I'm merely pointing out as someone who's not a Trump supporter, even you understand that fraud exists. We should not have a system in the most developed country in the world where we just say, yep, fraud exists. It'll just exist. We should do everything possible to make sure. Now, even if fraud would always slip through the cracks, when people are bringing up fraud, if the Democratic Party's answer is, no, there's no fraud, there can't be fraud, they're lying. And the reason they lied is because they didn't want to make sure that the election was more secure. Period. That's not true, Natalie. Natalie says you need to educate yourself on the concept of observers versus election officials. At every counting table, there is one Republican and one Democrat. That's not true. For example, I could tell you for an effect, I've personally asked three districts here in rural Pennsylvania, and they said, we try to get one Republican and one Democrat, but in areas like this, it was very difficult to find Democrats. But they reached out and told the Democrats, if you want to send poll watchers, by all means. Most of the time they didn't, because we're talking about districts with 200 votes, almost all of them going to be Trump supporters. So the idea that there's some law that says there has to be a Republican and a Democrat at every table is just not true. That's the idea of poll watchers. Secondly, just because there would be a Republican and a Democrat counting ballots, they're not watching each other the whole time. They're counting ballots. That's what the poll watchers are for. It's like the movie Casino, right? Where they're explaining how the casino operates. What you're saying is half the dealers are Republican and half the dealers are Democrat. But that doesn't stop the dealers from being corrupt. The dealers aren't watching each other. That's what the pit boss is for. That's what the poll watchers are for. Those are the ones that are going to find irregularities. Can anyone give me a good reason why in Philadelphia they would not have allowed Republican poll watchers within 100 feet? And then when a court ordered them to do so, they stopped counting ballots and said, actually, we're going to challenge this. Yes, they count. No, they don't count the ballots together like you're thinking. It's not two people counting one ballot. That's not what's happening. Educate yourself. As always, the dumbest among us have the most arrogance. Educate yourself. Educate yourself. For example, you can see online, and I've actually showed why this might not be fraud. There is video after video of you'll see a person sitting there, two people sitting across from each other, one reading a ballot and the other one filling out ballots. Now, people said, look, there's a woman filling out ballots. That proves fraud. No, not necessarily, because what they could have been doing, if in that state it's legal to cure ballots, what happens is sometimes a ballot's filled out and it won't be able to go through the machine and be read. So what they do is they look through a human and say, okay, this person voted for Donald Trump, and then they voted for the Republican down ballot, and they voted for this Republican, and they voted for this Democrat. So the one person reads it out, the other person fills out the circles, right? So you'd say, see, that's not proof of fraud. The problem is, no one's sitting there checking to make sure the woman filling out is filling out what the man's saying. Which proves that your argument that they're both sitting there looking at the same ballot, filling out the same ballot, or running the same ballot through the machine is not true. We'll see whose username. You're right. No good faith argument here. You're right. There is no fraud. You're right. There's no. I wonder why the courts then ordered to allow the Republican poll. What's the point of poll watchers? No poll watchers needed. None. So what we should do is next election, we'll just have Republican poll watchers. That's it. Just Republican poll watchers. No fraud possible. No Democrat within 100 feet. And I'll say, oh, there are Democrats counting the ballots. It's okay, right? And when the Democrats say, no, we want poll watchers in the room. No, you can't be there. And all of you will say, yes, very reasonable. I agree. There's a Republican and a Democrat in the room. They're counting. So what's the problem? So you all can see the pathetic nature of the Democrats that come in that make every excuse possible for fraud. This is what they want to do. They're pathetic. They're okay with cheating. They are. And if deep down you could ask people like this, look, if you really knew there was cheating and it was enough to get Orange Man bad out, would you be for it? They would all say absolutely. If poll watchers aren't a requirement, why did the court rule in Philadelphia that Republicans were allowed to have poll watchers there? I have not deflected and moved the goalpost. I have not done that. I told you exactly what the Democrats did. How is that moving the goalpost? What goalpost did I move? I said Democrats said fraud didn't exist. That's what I said. I never said whose username. I said he admits, or she, whatever, that fraud does exist. So it's a shame that the Democrats lied to us in the media and said there wouldn't be fraud. So you've heard a lot about, so there's a case filed in Michigan that talks about specifically the allegations from poll watchers of things they saw. Now, I'm not going to talk about it much because when it comes to an allegation, I don't know. Like, I have no proof if the person that's testifying is telling the truth or not. I don't know that we'll ever know. But there are concerning allegations. Some of the things they said that ballots were supposedly done at 8 o'clock, but then at 4 in the morning, ballots came in from the back of the building, which was different than before. And that every ballot that came in of those tens of thousands, every single one was ballots for Joe Biden. So if things like that are true, that's very troubling. We'll have to see. One of the things, though, I wanted to talk about was this article with some graphs about election or about using mathematics. So a statistician went through. Let me bring this up. No, is that not working? Ooh. No, we don't want that. Come on. There we go. Now, I'll just go through this to the best of my ability. Here's a graph, and what this shows is, it says, this is based on their proprietary Edison data source, which would ordinarily be possible to access for people outside the press. The CSV is available here, and the script is generated here. I suggest everyone back up both these files. What we are looking at will be time series analysis, and you will see that it's extremely difficult to create convincing synthetic time series by data. By looking at the time series of a ballot counting process for the entire country, we could very easily spot fraud. One of the first things we noticed while exploring the data sets, there seemed to be an obvious pattern in the ratio of new Biden ballots to new Trump ballots. And you can see that it basically is following this line. As we can see on the log plot, for many counting process updates, we see an almost constant ratio of Biden to Trump. It's such a regular pattern that we could actually fit a linear regression model to it with near perfect accuracy, barring some outliers. How could this be possible? Is this a telltale sign of fraud? No. This is actually expected behavior. Also, we could use a weird pattern in ballot counting to spot a fraud. Here's the same pattern in Florida. Now, what this is looking at is when you're adding Trump votes and when you're adding Biden votes. And see, it's almost a straight line. In Texas, almost a straight line. South Dakota, almost a straight line. And again, all over the country. What appears to be happening is that the points on the straight line are actually mail-in votes. The reason they're so homogeneous across the respect to the ratio of Biden versus Trump votes is that they get randomly shuffled in the mail like a deck of cards. So in other words, when you shuffle a card, right, imagine that you're pulling a card. And imagine that you're testing, you're keeping track of what your chances are of each card being pulled. The less you shuffle, the less random it'll be. So there's more chances of getting like, wow, I got 3 2s in a row. The more you shuffle, the less chance that is of occurring. Well, it's the same with these mail-in ballots because the mail-in ballots were coming from different days, different times, different locations, all coming through the mail. That was basically the mail shuffling them. That's why you get this near straight line. Because as each state, there might be more mail-in ballots for Biden than Trump, but it will be randomized. So if there's 20% more mail-in votes from Biden than Trump, it will be randomized. You'll still end up with 20% more, but it's not like you're getting all the ballots from Philadelphia at one time and from this place or from this specific county because they're shuffled. And people might say, well, what's the proof of that? Well, the proof is in the data. Look at Florida. Look at Texas. Look at South Dakota. So if we dig a little deeper, here's the plot of the same lines in Florida's voting data, but this time it's the ratio of Biden to Trump ballots versus time. What we see is the initial ballot reporting is very noisy and random. So you can see here, there's spots all over the place. But then look what happens. Straight line. The initial reporting represents in-person voting. These vote reports have large variation because in-person voting happens across different geographic areas that have different political alignments. We can see the same pattern of noisy in-person voting followed by homogeneous mail-in reporting in almost every case. What we see in almost all examples across the country is the ratio of mail-in Dem to Republican ballots is very consistent across time, but with the notable drift from Dem to slightly more Republican. So, now what this isn't saying is, well, that's going to be the exact same percentage in every state. That's not true. For example, California, a state that went heavily for Biden, the percentage of Biden to Trump ballots is going to be higher for Biden. But it's still going to be a straight line once you get to the mail-in ballots because it's been shuffled. So here we see Florida. Notice that the in-person voting is scattered because you're getting a rural county, an urban area, etc. But the mail-in ballots, it's not like that. Straight line, straight line. This slight drift from Dem to R mail-ins occurs again and again and is likely due to outlying rural areas having more R votes. These outlying areas take longer to ship their ballots to the polling centers. Now we get to the good stuff. When we see mail-in ballot counting where there isn't relatively stable ratios of Democrat to R ballots that slightly drift R, we have an anomaly. Anomalies themselves aren't necessarily fraud, but they can help us spot fraud. So let's look at the anomalies. Where do you think the anomalies occurred? If you had to guess. I'll put the source on them. If you had to guess, I wonder where the anomalies were. Could it be, maybe the swing states? Let's look at Wisconsin. This is Wisconsin vote counting history log. Again, the y-axis is the ratio of Dem to R ballots in the reporting batch. And on the x-axis, we have reporting time. Around 4 a.m. there is a marked shift from the D to R mail-in ballots. This should not happen. This is an anomaly. See this? Four o'clock a.m. See the relative straight line and then whoop, all of a sudden the jump. Oh, that was enough to put Biden over the edge. Isn't that odd? Now again, what this means is because the mail-in ballots came through the mail, it's randomized. So even if Biden was going to win the state, I'm not arguing there that there wouldn't be a higher percentage of Biden ballots to Trump ballots. What I'm arguing is that would be consistent over time. Why the jump? Just enough to put Biden over the edge. At 4 a.m., when we were told they stopped counting, see, they basically stopped. Here's the gap where they stopped counting. And then, boop, when they start again, the straight line continues now, except it just jumped up for Biden. What happened just before 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. Central Time? Milwaukee's 169,000 absentee ballots en route. By 4 a.m., the D to R ratio was all thrown out of whack. That is because these ballots were not sampled from the real Wisconsin voter population, and they were not randomized in the mail sorting system with other ballots. They inherently have a different D to R signature than the rest of the ballots, quite possibly because additional ballots were added to the batch, either through backdating or ballot manufacturing or software tampering. This of this being kind of analogous to carbon-14 dating. Let's look at another place, Pennsylvania. Here's Pennsylvania's vote counting history. For the first part of the vote counting process, we see the same pattern for mail-in ballots that we've seen in every other state in the country, which is relatively stable D to R ratio that gradually drifts R with more ballots. But then as counting continues, the D to R ratio in mail-in ballots inexplicably begins increasing. Again, this should not happen. It is observed almost nowhere else in the country because all of the ballots are randomly shuffled in the mail system and should be homogeneous during the counting. The only exceptions are other suspect states. So here's Pennsylvania. Notice how it's starting and then all of a sudden it shifts up and continues to shift up towards Biden. That doesn't happen in any other state except these swing states. In Michigan, we see a combination of the Wisconsin strangeness together with the in Georgia, we see pretty much the same story as Pennsylvania. Increasing fractions of mail-in D ballots over time, even though it defies logic, and we see the pattern nowhere else in the country. Here's Georgia. Now again, let's look at what the rest of the country looked like. You see how that looks? And then all of a sudden, weird jump. It going up like this. Let's look at Michigan. We see a combination of Wisconsin together with Georgia, PA. We see both signs of contaminated ballot dumping and ballot ratios drifting toward Dems. See how it goes up? This is Virginia. He says, now in fairness, the only state out of the 50 that has anomalies but not accusations yet is Virginia. I think this is the exception that proves the rule. Yet to figure out what causes this shift, but no one accuses of it holding back. Let's wrap it up. It appears Dems shot themselves in the foot because making everyone do mail-in ballots actually makes it easier to catch mail-in ballot fraud. Because if all the ballots go through the postal system, they get shuffled like a deck of cards. So we expect reported ballot return to be extremely uniform in terms of the D to R ratio, but to drift slightly towards R over time because of the ballots travel farther. This pattern proves fraud and is a verifiable timestamp of when each fraudulent action occurred. So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was something that maybe most people didn't see. Where's username says, it's almost like Biden supporters voted by mail and states weren't allowed to start counting them immediately. If that's the case, then other states, particularly in states where Biden won, we would see that same updraft. The only state that was allowed to count mail-in ballots early was Florida. Yet instead, we see that same straight line in every state except the swing states. Why would it be different in the swing states? Yes, I showed the state. That's... Again, I'll show you one more time because someone asked. Notice the straight line pattern. Florida, totally consistent. Texas, totally consistent. South Dakota, totally consistent. This is Florida, totally straight. Minnesota, totally straight. That's what it looks like in basically every state. The only state it doesn't look like that in are the swing states. Now, so do I think that fraud exists? Yes. Now, all of this, right, is different to, there was a second way that they stole the election, and that was before the election. By changing the way we vote 3 months out, by having total control over the tech companies that were censoring Trump and Trump supporters, by having total control over the media that was censoring stories critical of Joe Biden, by having the FBI be in the tank and spy on Donald Trump. All of these were ways that they stole the election. And for our Democrat friends that want to say, oh, you're crying, blah, 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 remember, they thought that the 2016 election was stolen by 12 Russian trolls posting on Pokemon Go and Facebook. So it clearly shows that they're disingenuous, the ones that are doing this, and they don't care. And the other thing is, I keep hearing about these Republican tiers, yet when you see the memes, all the memes are just putting MAGA hats on the liberals that were crying in 2016. Because they can't find the Republicans that acted like they did. They know that Biden supporters would have rioted had he lost. You don't see that so far with Trump supporters, do you? Huh. Isn't that odd? So their claims of, oh, you need to accept it and look how salty you are. Do I look salty? This is exactly what I expected to have happen. I said I don't mind Biden supporters coming on and making fun of me. Trump supporters would have done it to them, so I don't mind if they do it to me. But to listen to a bunch of people that wanted to talk about Russians using Pokemon Go stealing an election, then say, hey, when we see these anomalies and, 6,000 votes being switched from one party to the other, we should just let it go. We shouldn't focus on it. It's hilarious. Russia, Russia, Russia. That's all they talk about, right? Whose name is it anyway?
I like how you assume anyone here propagated the Russiagate conspiracy.
I showed you a fake chart. The data's there.
My brain runs on a script.
Hey, who is your username? Would you like to call into the show? Call on in. Would you like to? Call on in, buddy. You're so smart. I'm just running on a script. You know the script, right? Call on in.
I can't because something.
I'm not going to respond. Whose username? It's my show. I could say I'm not going to respond to you and then respond if I want. And? I'm not on copium. I don't think the courts will overturn it. You people don't even logically, you're not even consistent. You're right. I don't think the courts will overturn it. How's that copium? Pointing out the fraud and the anomalies isn't copium. It's pointing out the cheating that the Democrats do. And again, we know the Democrats cheated going into the election. If, for example, the media would have been totally the opposite and tech companies would have been censoring Biden and they would have censored any story critical of Trump, I guarantee, and then Biden would have narrowly lost, I guarantee every Democrat in here right now would be like, this is garbage, it's not fair. But you can see what the capability of so many people on the left. They're okay with the cheating. They don't want to investigate it. That's where they're at. Not everyone, but that's where most of your Twitch lefties are coming from. So they have really no argument. They just say, but I didn't say that. I didn't say that. We're supposed to pretend. Oh, no one said. Who was it? There was no one on the Democrat side talking about Russia for 4 years. That didn't happen. And I think on YouTube, for some reason, I can't see your comments now if you're on YouTube. So now would be a good time to remind you, if you're on YouTube watching me, you should try to go to DLive, particularly because, one, you should not support companies like YouTube that were involved in putting their thumb on the scale to try to swing this election for Biden because they are corrupt. They will censor conservatives. They're going to continue to do so and get worse. So you should get off platforms like YouTube. And second, eventually I'll be removed from YouTube anyways. So... but yeah, you see the pathetic nature of what's going on in the left. And it's so many people that come here. But I really enjoy people like whose username is it anyway, because what they show is the disingenuousness and the utter stupidity of people on the left. So it's great to have someone like that on. I really do thank you for being here. It is very good to be able to show people, because oftentimes you talk about this and they say, no one's that dumb. No one's that disingenuous. Yes, sure they are. Yeah. So there you have it. Thank you so much for being here. Now, where do we go from here? There's a lot of positive things to take out of this. So we were talking about the Republican Party and whether or not you should celebrate a Republican Party that was unwilling to defend Trump. I think I stand by what I said yesterday, that I'm not going to be voting for anyone or promoting anyone that I feel allowed the only issue that matters, corruption, to take place. I'm not going to be defending or, supporting any of those people. But there is hope. We can push candidates that actually are interested in ending this corruption. and hopefully then change the Republican Party for the inside out. Hopefully then we'll be able to get people. Lindsey Graham just won, but hopefully 6 years from now we could get someone like him out. We could get Mitt Romney out. We could get these people that don't care, that are in seats of power in the Republican Party. We could get them out. So yes, it is worth it to still be active politically. However, I stand by my claim that culture is more important, and we need to focus on culture, which I think will be the most important thing. So that's where I see signs of hope. I see signs of hope that this identity politics that's being shoved down our throat from the Democrats that pretend that they're the party that cares about minorities, I think that you're starting to see people slowly wake up, which is a good thing. You're not black if you don't vote for Joe Biden, as he's eulogizing Grand Cyclops of the KKK, as Kamala Harris is saying she's very proud of Jacob Blake Sr. as he posts anti-Semitic messages, as Bill de Blasio targets Jews specifically in New York. I think people are going to start to wake up. And I hope I'm wrong if it, as it looks like that it's Biden. I will be hoping that Biden does great for this country. I really will, even though I think he's corrupt and that it was a corrupt process. Still, I want America to do well, so I'll be cheering for Biden to do well, as I'll be looking into his corruption and looking into the corruption of the establishment, as I always have. But I'd be more than happy to say I don't see any corruption. I think Biden's killing it. I think he's doing a great job. I don't see it happening, but that's what I would be cheering for. But I think what you'll see is, as always, and the reason I can make this claim is because I've been alive for 36 years, and I've probably been paying attention for, 20 of them. You start to see this pattern. The Democratic Party, we care about black people. We care about black people. Oh, black people, black issues. And then they win election and do nothing for 4 years. Oh, now we care about black people again. We care about black people. We care about them and do nothing for 4 years. So I think that the pattern will continue. I hope not, though. We'll see. We'll see what's going on, but that's my prediction. So I think that people are going to start to wake up. And by the way, not that I really care, but the people out there that want to focus on race and the people that are like white supremacists or white nationalists and things like that, one of the things they say is like, well, if you care about liberty-minded principles and the Constitution and conservatism, that's white people. Really? Because if the exit polls are accurate, Cuban Americans are more conservative than white people. And we're starting to see all sorts of people of color migrate in that direction. I've said it a million times. I don't care about my skin color. 100 years from now, I don't care if there's anyone who looks like me. I would be more concerned that there are people that think closer to me. So, I think it's great. And I think that the Republican Party, and particularly conservatism, is a message for all people. We don't judge you based on the color of your skin. We judge you based on the content of your character. That's the Democrats that focus on the color of your skin. That's the left-wingers. That's what they do because they don't have an argument. They're racist. That's why Joe Biden said one of the first things he'll do is overturn Trump's executive order on critical race theory being removed from federal institutions. Because critical race theory is racism. It teaches that you're evil based on your skin color or you're privileged based on your skin color and things like that, so that you have a detriment based solely on your skin color, and that is racism. That's what academia is. It is racism. That's what it is. That's what the Democratic Party is. That's what the establishment is. It wants to focus on race over and over again so that it could divide us and it could keep power. That's the Democratic Party. That's people on the left. That's what they believe. They believe in focusing solely on your race because they are racist. That's what it is. Now, not all of them realize that they're racist, but that's what it is. It's racism. So there are positive signs, even politically, that we see moving forward. Again, you're starting to see more people in the entertainment industry not be afraid to buck the system and say, no, I don't have to be what you tell me. I don't have to be a Democrat just because that's what everyone around me tells me. And that's important because that's one aspect of culture we need to get involved in. So those are positive signs. Now, some other things that I want to talk about. Go to my Twitter here. Pfizer just came out and announced a vaccine to COVID that's 90% effective. according to their study. Pfizer is the company that did Viagra, the big pharmaceutical company. So they announced this vaccine that they say is 90% effective. Now, first off, I understand there's a lot of people on the right that will be critical of vaccines. I'm not going to speak to it. I don't really care. But ironically, it's the left that have been the anti-vaxxers. So Cuomo came out and said, I don't trust this vaccine. And we saw that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden both said that there were circumstances they wouldn't trust a vaccine. So the anti-science, anti-vaxxer party, now the party of the left, that's the Democrats. Cuomo just said this yesterday, that he doesn't know that he would trust this vaccine. So that's where we're at in that. But the important thing to realize is I even have a Democrat friend of mine who voted for Biden, not a Trump supporter, who even he had to admit, incredibly shady. Incredibly shady for Pfizer to come out right after the election and say, oh yeah, we have a vaccine. Almost like they didn't want to tell you before the election because they didn't want Donald Trump getting credit. Now you might say, where's the proof of that? Well, one, Pfizer came out and said, no, we weren't part of this task force that Trump had. We didn't receive any money for that. Only that's not true. You could look it up yourself and see that they actually did receive millions of dollars. And even CNN and other places were reporting that if this were, what's his name? I think it was Gupta on CNN, the doctor, said that because the federal government and through Trump's plan was facilitating this, if the vaccine's approved by the FDA, it will be free to the American people because the government has been involved with them and offered to pay for it. So they stand to gain billions of dollars from the federal government because of Trump's plan. So Pfizer just lied about it. But you still might say, well, maybe the vaccine wasn't ready until then. So Phil Kerpen, who I feel has been the best journalist on COVID, says 94 confirmed events when only 62 are required means Pfizer absolutely could have released its interim results before the election, but chose not to. In other words, they used 94 events instead of 62. They would have had 62 events done over a month ago. But they chose not to say, hey, it's looking promising. Why? Because that would have helped Donald Trump. Because the pharmaceutical industries want Joe Biden as president. That's what they want. Just like every corporation. Not every, but almost every. Because all of the institutions are for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the institutional candidate. The Democratic Party is the establishment. The irony is you see people on the left saying, finally, and Michael Tracy, who's a left-wing reporter that's been very good, I think, as a reporter in the past year or so, with all the craziness going on, he reported that he was in Atlanta, and a woman came up to him and basically high-fived him and was like, finally, we got the good old boys out of running things. Yes, you elected Joe Biden, who's been in Washington for 47 years, who eulogized a grand cyclops of the KKK, and finally we got the good old boys out of there. And this is the irony. This is how sad it is for my friends on the left. You're voting for the most establishment people possible to fight the establishment. Systemic racism, institutional racism, I know. We'll vote for the people that have been in charge of those systems and institutions for 47 years. Good plan. That'll work. Oh, I'm tired of these corporations robbing the country blind. I'm tired of all these wealthy people. I know. I'll vote for the candidate that they're all supporting and paying for. That's the brilliance that you see from so many people on the left. Now, some of them might have just said, yeah, I know that it's bad, but Trump was worse. That's fair. I disagree with that, but I understand that position. And by the way, I'm not saying you're an evil person. I'm just saying I think that you were wrong. Just like my left-wing friends look at me for supporting Trump and they say, I think that you're wrong. So it's not saying that we should attack people or, anything like that. I'm just saying it just seems counterintuitive. They funded Trump too, not nearly as much. And if for example, if the pharmaceutical industry was for Donald Trump as opposed to Joe Biden, why didn't Pfizer release these results of this vaccine earlier? Grassroots funding of progressives. Let's look at the presidential ballot. Overwhelmingly, the wealthiest Americans donated to the Democrats and donated to Joe Biden. We see this over and over. It's been the case since at least 2012. The most elite in this country support the Democrats. How can that be? I thought the Democrats were going to punish them. No, not at all. But, that's what's going on. Let's see. I had some more tweets that we could look at. Here's Dr. Fauci. Less than 1 week after the election, Dr. Fauci says that news of the Pfizer vaccine means people could start getting the vaccines this month. And we'll be giving vaccine to people very likely before the end of this year.
Effort that's been assigned specifically to that. You know, part of that Operation Warp Speed, there's the scientific aspect of it, which is led by Moncef Slaoui. And then there's the logistic aspect that's led by General Gus Perna. And he has been working full time to make sure that the logistics of getting this distribution will go smoothly. Now, right now, we know that what the company will do, very likely, in fact, I'm certain they'll be doing it, is putting in soon, within the next week and a half or so, for an emergency use authorization and ultimately for ultimate approval of the vaccine, which means if that goes along smoothly, that we may have doses that we're able to give to people by the end of November, the beginning of December, probably well into December. Now, again,
Now, Dr. Fauci could have came out and said that. Remember, Trump was saying, oh, vaccine by the end of the year. We're going to have this vaccine by the end of the year. I'm talking to these companies. The vaccine's coming. And all the left was like, that's impossible. No. Oh, my goodness. I wouldn't trust that, says Cuomo. That's what they were all saying. Dr. Fauci's supposed to be the point man. Could have he came out and cleared up? Yes, it looks very likely that this vaccine will come by the end of the year. He could have said that. He chose not to. Why? Because they didn't want voters to know. They understood that the big issue against Trump was going to be COVID. They didn't want voters to know that he was doing a fantastic job of coordinating with the military, with government scientists, and with private entities in order to develop this vaccine. They wanted to make it seem like, no, he's doing a terrible job. So Dr. Fauci and Pfizer and the rest of them allowed the attacks to be made against Trump. Oh, it's impossible. This vaccine won't be coming. Nope. They didn't say a word. Wouldn't Dr. Fauci at the very least have been like, yeah, that's possible. It looks incredibly likely. They knew a month ago. They knew what was going on with this vaccine, that it was passing test after test. D-Live not working well, Brady. I don't know what the heck's wrong with it. The United States accused Ukraine of election fraud in 2004. So they released official State Department documents showing what they alleged were the signs that they felt led them to the conclusion that there was election fraud. Let's take a look at that. Sorry, you won't be able to see all of this, but the following examples of the most egregious, widely observed, and reported examples of election fraud. This is Ukraine 2004. Illegal use of absentee ballots. According to the respected NGO Committee of Voters in Ukraine, massive electoral fraud was committed through the illegal use of absentee voter certificates. For example, people were caught in Dnipropetrovsk and Sumy Oblast with their pockets stuffed with blank absentee ballots that they were using to vote at multiple polling stations. We know that ballots were sent. Again, as Rand Paul correctly pointed out yesterday, 1.1 million Americans received checks from the federal government as a stimulus that were dead. We know that these ballots were being sent all over the place. People saying, I got 3, I got 4 ballots. What's this going on? So, first sign, check. Second, opposition observers ejected. Observers from Our Ukraine and other opposition groups were expelled from most polling stations in eastern Ukraine on election day. For example, the Territorial Election Commission, District Number 42 in Donetsk Oblast, Our Ukraine observers were kicked out for all but a few polling stations. Sound familiar? Yep, that's exactly what happened here. They were kicking these observers out of places like Philadelphia. There had to be a court order to allow the observers back in. So check. Next, North Korean-style turnout in the east. Turnout in the pro-Yukhanovich Eastern Oblast was unnaturally high. In several electoral districts, turnout for the runoff has increased by 30 to 40% over the first round. In Luhansk Oblast, the reported turnout rate hit nearly 96%, a number that, to quote the OSCE, even Stalinist North Korea would envy. A similar turnout rate was reported in Donetsk Oblast, where 98% of the votes went to hometown candidate Yukhanovich. We see the same thing. We see specific areas where all of a sudden voter turnout was incredibly high, like in Wisconsin. where without looking at same-day voter registration, we had a 90% turnout. We still haven't got those numbers of how many people registered in the same day, but it would have to be about 900,000 to bring that number down to the normal, 73% turnout. Even that's an incredibly high number compared to what Wisconsin usually is. So again, we see in select areas incredibly high turnout rate. Mobile ballot box fraud. In the second round of the election, the number of voters who supposedly cast ballots at home using mobile ballot boxes was double that of the first round. Much of this voting occurred without observers being present, was massively fraudulent. In McConaughey of Oblast, for example, nearly 35% of the Oblast voter purportedly cast their ballots at home. We see the same thing here, the propensity of fraud because so many people were casting at home, more than any election in history. Computer data allegedly altered to favor Yovanovitch. There were credible reports showing that Yovanovitch supporters gained illegal access to the Central Election Commission's computer system and illegally altered vote tabulation being transmitted. We see glitches where accidentally votes for Trump, 6,000, were going to Biden. Yep, check. Reports of opposition fraud. Yovanovitch supporters allege that Yushchenko's supporters stuffed ballot boxes in western Ukraine, but the reports of evidence of pro-Yovanovitch fraud greatly outweighed those for Yushchenko. Yep, that's exactly what we see. Oh, what's going on here? I don't know. Fix that later. The last thing I want to talk about here. According to Ben Rhodes, who's a former deputy national security advisor to Obama, Biden is already having phone calls with foreign leaders about the agenda they're going to pursue January 20th. Makes sense. That's what I would expect. I mean, even if this election would be overturned by the courts, which again, I don't expect, you would still expect Joe Biden, who looks like he's going to be the president, I would expect him to be reaching out to foreign leaders. I don't see a controversy here at all. Totally makes sense. Oh, wait. There is one thing. There's one little thing. It's not my standard that matters. It's the Joe Biden standard that matters. He won, right? It looks like he's going to win. It's the Democrat standard. Looks like they won the presidency. So it's their standard we should apply. They said in 2016 that General Flynn and the Trump transition team reaching out to foreign leaders was a violation of the Logan Act. So, according to the Democrat standards, I assume we're now going to arrest Joe Biden, right? It's a Logan Act violation. What's Joe Biden? What were we told by the Democrats? There's only one president. The transition team has no official office. They're not official representatives of this country yet. So why is Joe Biden reaching out to foreign leaders? That's a clear violation of the Logan Act, according to the Democrats. Where are they at? Now, of course, they don't want to admit it. They don't care. They don't care about the double standard. The truth is they knew that the attacks, all the FBI investigation and stuff into Trump, they knew it was all garbage. They didn't care. Orange man bad. It was okay. I was saying this the entire time that we were going through all of this. When this is turned, when you're in power and we say, okay, now it's the same standard, right? They'll all say, no, it's different now. Now it's different. Now it's a different situation. Now that we're in power, you can't do that. You can't investigate us. Of course it makes sense for Joe Biden to be talking to foreign leaders and his team. I totally agree. I agreed the same in 2016 with Trump's team. Yeah, we were told that was a crime that needed to be investigated. So, does anyone have the nerve here on the Democrat side to say, I agree, Joe Biden should be investigated? Anyone? Natalie says he has a right to reach out to foreign leaders as a mere opposition to a presidential election. Learn your shit, dude. I agree. Where were you in 2016 when the Obama administration decided to investigate the Trump administration for doing exactly what Biden's doing right now? Where were you? Did you say learn your shit, Democrats? Learn your shit, Obama? Is that what you were saying? No, you weren't saying that. You were for the investigation into Flynn. Asking them to interfere is different. When did Flynn ask anyone to interfere? And here we go. Holy shit, you're dumb. Yep. Was there ever an accusation that Flynn asked anyone to interfere? Nope. So why aren't we monitoring Joe Biden and his team's calls like we did Flynn's? We have to. We have to now, right? They're talking to foreign governments. Who knows what they're asking? Time to unmask all of them to the press. Time to investigate, right? That's what we were told. And here we are. And now we're back to this. Donald Trump publicly asked Russia to interfere. Laughable. Laughable. Absolutely laughable. You're right, Tactical Yeeter. Most of them don't know. They have no clue. They're totally fine with the double standard. Totally fine. Again, so Logan Act violation, that should be investigated right now, according to the left standards. Also, if Trump decides that he wants to pay a foreign spy to say that they have evidence that Joe Biden got peed on by some Chinese people, that's good enough. Start an investigation. Start wiretapping people in Biden's camp's phones, right? That's the standard. That's it. All it takes is opposition research. That's it. It's not illegal for opposition of a presidential election to communicate with other countries. Learn your shit. I agree. Can you explain to me why Flynn was investigated? Natalie? That's who said that, by the way, for those on Podbean. Right, I agree. You would have to be a complete imbecile to think that a transition team wouldn't be talking to foreign leaders, both friendly and adversarial. You'd have to be a complete moron. That's what the Democrats did for 4 years. Oh, it was illegal for Trump's team to be doing that. That was illegal. Logan Act violation. That's what Joe Biden, we know from the emails of the Oval Office meeting that occurred in Obama's office. I forget the exact date in 2016. That it was Joe Biden himself who brought up Flynn talking to Kislyak was a possible Logan Act violation. It was Joe Biden himself. Constant hypocrisy. That's all they have. Constant. And they know it. They know it. Everyone on here knows it. They all know it. Oh, you're stupid. Oh, it's different this time. They all know it. They know they're hypocrites. They don't care. They don't care at all. They knew what the FBI did was corrupt to Trump and his team. They knew it, and they were for it. They were totally for it. Now, many of them probably are establishment corporatist leftists, and that's fine. That's fine. If that's what they are, fine. But many of them are progressives. Many of them didn't really want Joe Biden. Many of them wanted someone like Bernie Sanders, or they would prefer someone like a Jill Stein, perhaps, that's more progressive. The FBI will use the exact same tactics against those people. And they'll be like, what happened? What happened? That's not right. Look, wait a minute. Aldrich says, is Biden currently directly negotiating with foreign governments that are having disputes with the USA? I don't know. Let's spy on them. That's what they did to Trump's team. Or is he just publicly reaching out to them? I don't know. What's the difference? What was Flynn's big crime? We have the transcript. You want to know what Flynn asked Kislyak? He said, hey, I know that Obama sanctioned and expelled a bunch of diplomats, but can you just not retaliate until we're in office so we can talk to you? That's what he said. What's so wrong about that? What exactly is wrong about that statement? What's terrible about a transition team going to one of our enemies and saying, hey, don't do anything to harm the American people, okay? We'd like to talk to you when we get into office. Can anyone explain what the trouble is with that? Why that's bad? We know that's what was said. We have the transcripts. How is that asking them to interfere? Flynn's crime was lying to the FBI, Eric says. One, he didn't lie to the FBI. That was a lie. Second, so he was being investigated for Logan Act violations, which is why the FBI talked to him in the first place. So what we should do is we should get the transcripts of every single Biden transition team member, just like we did with the Trump people, get the transcripts of their calls, unmask them to the public, Say, oh, this is Joe Biden's team contacted this person in China. They contacted this person in Russia, unmask them to the press, then interview them without their lawyer present, and then we'll see if they lied or not. How's that? Why were they talking to Flynn in the first place? Because they were investigating Logan Act violations. So they should investigate Biden team for Logan Act violations. Then we'll see if they lied or not. How about that? And that's all they have.
Cope more. Cope. Yeah, asking us to not be hypocrites. Cope more.
That's it. That's all they have. They're laughable. Absolutely laughable. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. The double standard, you can see it right in front of your face. Absolutely, you can see it. And then where do they transition from here? Here's what Natalie says. How can you stand a person who's made tens of thousands of false claims proven by mere history of basic factual research? How can you think it's legitimate to accept everything he says? You see? Oh, you proved that I'm a hypocrite? You proved that the Biden-Obama administration was corrupt going after for Trump for something that we all knew was perfectly reasonable? His transition team talking to foreign leaders? Oh, and the media and the Democrats went along with it for 4 years? So you proved I'm a hypocrite? Trump's a liar. Trump's a liar. That's my response. Trump's a liar. They're 12-year-old Destiny fans. Probably. Belgium is a beautiful city. Yeah. I love this too. Is Trump said dumb things? Sure. I assume anyone who's like basically has every public word they're saying monitored is going to say dumb things. But no doubt here, I'm not going to lie. Belgium was a beautiful city. Natalie wants you to know that Trump said that one time. As opposed to Joe Biden, his articulateness. I mean, that's the one thing you could say about Joe Biden. He never screws up his speech. I mean, yeah, he didn't know the difference between his wife and his sister. He didn't know that. And the other day, like right before the election, he called his granddaughter Beau Biden, his son that died. Oh, and don't forget, he's putting forth a task force to fight. Joe Biden will get this task force. Oh, yeah, but Trump said Belgium's a good city, right? Not like Joe Biden. That guy's very articulate. Or when Joe Biden told us he's putting the biggest fraud task, he's created the biggest voter fraud organization in the history. Yeah, I guess he was telling us the truth. Joe Biden doesn't slip up when he says things, right? Says Joe Biden. You lying dog-faced pony soldier. Joe Biden doesn't say anything strange, right? No, he's very articulate. Trump one time said Belgium was a good city, so yeah, he's out there, man. Not like Joe Biden. There's a man who has all of his mental faculties together. He's not making any slip-ups of speech. I can't wait for that task force to start. It's going to be a fantastic task force. I've been telling my wife for a long time that Trump is the biggest problem in this country. When are we going to finally deal with Trump? It's stuff. Schools all across this country, people were just sitting around like, Jesus. I thought I was going to do good in those midterms, but then thank God Joe Biden's fighting that. Natalie says, I've been indoctrinated with the concept of fraud unless Trump wins in 2015. Again, deflecting from the clear double standards that we saw from the FBI, the Democrats, and the media demanding investigations into the Trump team and actually doing them versus now the exact same shoes, the shoes on the other foot, exact same situation, and all of a sudden, no. So we'll deflect from that. Secondly, who was it that refused to accept the results of the 2016 election? Was that Republicans? Oh, no, that was Democrats saying 12 Russian trolls stole the election. That's who it was. That's right. They had to have 4-year investigations constantly into Trump over a bogus Russia collusion hoax. That's who it was. It was them in 2016. And now they want to say, when we're seeing obvious signs of fraud, when we see, even before we get to the fraud, we thought that 12 Russian trolls using Facebook was enough to interfere in an election. But Facebook itself, weighing in on behalf of Biden constantly, that's perfectly reasonable. Hillary conceded in 2016 because there was no evidence of voter fraud. Al Gore thought there was in 2000, That took 35 days to decide. I bet any of the leftists that are alive now weren't saying, just concede, Al Gore. They were like, look, we should make sure that these vote counts in Florida were legitimate. I don't disagree with that. He was asked outright if you'll accept the outcome of the election. He said, we'll just see. Right. Because why would you say yes to that question? What if there was fraud? Then no, I won't accept it. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton and the Democrats were game planning for Joe Biden, saying, under no circumstances concede the election. And they didn't in 2016. They said they conceded, but they immediately started. We know from the FBI documents, Hillary Clinton concocted a story in October, or even before then. In September, we had people reaching out to James Comey at the FBI that Hillary Clinton concocted the Russia collusion hoax in order to distract from her and the server investigation that was going on from the FBI. We know that. We see the documents that show that. Again, I know the people on the left don't care. They don't care that we spent 4 years dealing with a lie, weaponizing the most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world, just so the Democrats and the media could have their way because they refused to accept the results of the 2016 election. But now they get all upset when Trump and his supporters are like, we want to make sure that fraud didn't occur and we're having court cases. Oh, that's not right. That's not right all of a sudden. That's all they do. Remember, there's still a large portion of Democrats that think Russia interfered with voting machines in 2016. Oh, makes sense. Trump's questioning the results of the election, but Hillary Clinton isn't. Makes sense. Show me the quote. Natalie says Trump said 3 different occasions between July and August this year that unless I win, the election will be rigged. Show me the quote. Post it. Meanwhile, Josh Shapiro here in Pennsylvania said, if we count all the ballots, guaranteed Trump loses. Implying, well, if Trump wins, then we didn't count all the ballots. It was fraud. That was our attorney general in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. But I'll wait for Natalie. Natalie says 3 times Trump said, if I don't win, it's rigged. So let's see it. Tactical Eater shows Hillary saying, you could run the best campaign. You could even become the nominee. And you could have the election stolen from you, she said to Cheers on the Los Angeles stop of her Evening with the Clintons tour with her husband, former President Bill Clinton. Right. And who's your name anyway, says Natalie. Stop trying to convince them and just laugh. Sure. No, you're absolutely right. Trump said 3 times between July and August, if I don't win, it's rigged. So she'll provide the evidence here. Right? Let's see the quote. It would be simple. 3 times he said it. Must have been in public. It'll be very easy to find the quote Trump saying, if I don't win, the election's rigged. Let's see it. No, that's cope. Asking for evidence of the bullshit that we're saying. Coping. What's the best way to receive the quotes? Put it in the chat. Let's leave everyone see it. There you go. Provide it. We can all see the chat. Put it in. You have a quote saying 3 times Trump saying, if I don't win, the election's rigged. Trump said that mail-in votes can be rigged. Yep, he said that. Show me in that article where it says, if I don't win, it's rigged. Show me where he said that. He said it'll be rigged. He said the election will be rigged. Mail-in ballots will be fraudulent. Yep, I said that too. He didn't say the proof is if I don't win, it's rigged. He said it will be rigged. Show me where he said if I don't win, the election's rigged. Dude, can I speak to leftists like they're human or no? See, again, this is, people come in, copium, liar, molding, and then when I respond to them, you're like, hey man, can you speak to these leftists with dignity? I am speaking to leftists with dignity. I'm speaking to these particular leftists that came in here acting like morons as if they're morons. That's what I'm doing. Natalie, Post it to the chat. Where do I send it? This is, so just an example. Here we go. So this is the brilliant nature of Natalie and those on the left. She's talking to me. She could see that I'm reading her. She could see that I'm reading her comments, right? She sees that. She knows that we could all see it. And she's like, I don't know how to post the 3 quotes of Trump saying, where do I send it? What do I do? Again, I say, Natalie, we're reading what you're typing. Put it here in the chat. But what do? I can't figure it out. You're reading me, but I can't figure out how you could read me.
An airfield in rural Nevada.
Hello, Nevada.
Taken over by a throng of Trump supporters, despite state COVID crowd restrictions that limit gatherings to 50.
But your governor tried to stop us.
This site chosen after other venues refused to buck state COVID rules. The president relished the open defiance.
Tried very hard to stop us from having this event tonight. We call this a protest because if you call it a protest, you're allowed to have it.
President Trump attacked polling that shows Joe Biden ahead in this battleground state that Clinton won in 2016. Biden leads in Nevada 46-42 over the president, according to a New York Times poll, while Mr. Trump retains support for his handling of the economy.
Joe Biden's agenda is made in China. My agenda is made in the USA.
The president repeatedly sowed mistrust in the election process.
It's a rigged election. It's the only way we're going to lose.
On COVID, the president again insisted the worst of the pandemic is behind.
So let's see what the comment was. She said, so that's September. Let's see the comment that was made here. Trump said on 3 different occasions between July to August of this year that unless I win, this will be a rigged election. Now, what he said there was, they're rigging the election, I'm going to lose. I'll admit that that's basically what Natalie's saying. That's not 3 times between July and August. Hillary Clinton and the Democrats saying, it's been rigged for 4 years. Hillary Clinton and the Democrats saying, don't concede, it'll be stolen. Russians. Did he say it between July and August? Go ahead. But I will say, I, like Donald Trump, have been saying they're going to rig the mail-in votes. That's exactly what they did. Right. Keeley says, he says if he lost legally, he'll concede. What that is. But I will admit, he did say more than I thought that they're going to rig it so he'll lose. Right. Very patriotic to sow discord and distrust in your country's election. You know how the Democrats, had the whole transition integrity project. We had Hillary Clinton, the former presidential candidate for the Democrats, saying Joe Biden shouldn't concede. Again, Trump saying this, I think it's so funny. Trump saying this, that's bad, according to all these Democrats, saying that it could be rigged. The Democrats for 4 years saying Russia stole the election for Trump, that's perfectly fine. They didn't have a problem with sowing discord then. No problem. The difference is words. I don't care what Hillary Clinton or Trump said versus actions. Trump's team was spied on as a result of those words. Has Trump's team spied on Biden? If Trump does the same behavior to Biden that the left did to him, fine. Oh, Natalie, you figured out how to post. Yeah, people beat you to it. Got it. I already brought it up on my stream. Did I not? They wanted Trump to say, we'll accept. For 4 years, they said, we refuse to accept the results of the election. Russia interfered. And then they're like, but we demand you accept the results of the election. Meanwhile, Democrats were out there saying, don't concede under any circumstance, Joe Biden. They were out there saying, it'll look like Trump's winning election night, but he really lost. That's what they were doing. No problem with that. None. Trump's own FBI said Iran and Russia were interfering. Do you not understand the difference between interfering, misinformation, and fraud? We also had people on the left that said that Russia interfered with voting machines. That was a lie. Many people on the left still believe that. And just because the FBI said people were interfering, they interfered this. Do you think, let me ask you this. Did the FBI, Al Dorico, did they say that those countries are interfering this year? Did they say that? I saw Chris Wray say that Russia and Iran and that China are all interfering in the election, correct? Right? Does anyone disagree with that? Aldrico, did Chris Wray say that Russia's interfering this time? Did the Democrats say that? They said Russia's interfering this time, right? Did they say China's interfering? Did they say Iran's interfering? Yes, they did. Okay, we can't trust the results of the election. This is fraudulent. We need to investigate Joe Biden. Joe Biden won, and it's clear that Russia, China, and Iran interfered. So that's it. There was interference into our election. We need to investigate it. Yes, we know Tactical Yeater. Of course, they always interfere. That's called geopolitics. But if there was interference this time, what the hell are you talking about? Like, again, this is the stupidity. I just said, Natalie, yeah, I guess he did say that more than I thought. And then you go, oh, I provided evidence, and you still don't agree. I just said I agree. I just said it. Straight from the horse's mouth, and you still don't agree. Interfering isn't fraud, you brain-worm-infested moron. Right, and they still, even with the interference, they refused to accept the results of the election for 4 years. Constant investigations, constant saying that the election was stolen, that Trump wouldn't have won if not for that interference. Yep, you're right, and that's not fraud. So what we're talking about here are the allegations of what went on. Again, like, everyone on the left can say what they want here. Was there 6,000 votes that was switched from Biden to Trump? Or from Trump to Biden in Michigan? Yep. Did that change at least one state legislator election from a Democrat that would have won to a Republican? Yep. Was that same system used in 31 states? Yep. You're okay with that, though. No problem. Oh, we should investigate. That happened. That actually happened. Undeniably, it happened. But everyone's like, but we shouldn't check to make sure it didn't happen elsewhere. It's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. No. Source for what? Some of the One second. I spelled Michigan. Mm-hmm. Software glitch in Michigan County tallied 6,000 Republican votes as Democrat. November 6, 2020. A glitch in software used to tabulate ballots in Antrim County, Michigan caused at least 6,000 Republican votes to be counted as Democrat, according to the Michigan GOP. The miscalculation, Cox said in a press conference, was first reported by a county clerk. A short investigation revealed that 47 counties in Michigan may have suffered a similar glitch. Antrim County had to hand count all of the ballots, and these counties that used the software need to closely examine for the same. Michigan, a battleground state, Ronna McDaniel also spoke at the press conference, shedding light in the election, saying that 2,000 Republican ballots were marked as Democrat in Oakland County due to a clerical error, which wrongly gave the carries to the Democrat candidate. The American people need to have confidence. Let's see what this says. Oh, for God's sakes. This is from the Detroit Free Press. Fixed computer glitch turns losing Republican into a winner in Oakland County. A computer error led to officials in Oakland County to hand an upset victory Wednesday to a Democrat, only to switch the win back to an incumbent Republican a day later. In Oakland County's 15th County Commission District, representing Rochester and Rochester Hills, the initial count gave a 104-vote margin to the Democrat, Melanie Hartman, amounting to a razor-thin majority of 50.08%. That stunned the incumbent, Adam Koffinger, or however you pronounce it, giving him a sure sense that he'd lost. I thought that was that, he said. Those were the results, and I said I would not seek a recount. But what a difference a day makes in weather, love, and the 15th district election for Oakland County Commissioner. On Thursday, he was stunned again, this time by a call from the Oakland County's Director of Elections, flipping the outcome to him. Apparently, there was a technical glitch in Rochester Hill, and so I actually ended up winning by a little over 1,100 votes. The margin of votes was exactly 1,127 to be exact. That gave him a 51.67 share of the total votes. The fresh result buoyed the incumbent's spirits, but also had him worried about the prevent future election errors, he said. I'm very grateful to the officials who caught the error, but we need to ensure that these issues will prevent them entirely. People are acting like fixing our elections is a partisan thing when it shouldn't be, he said. We have to do a very, very good clerk in Rochester Hills. Huh. That's interesting. Proof. Where's the proof? Oh, it did happen. But I understand uninformed people here on the left was unaware. I told you I don't think that the outcome will change. That's not what I said. What we're seeing here is... Post the link! Detroit Free Press! Post the damn link! Okay, you got it. And then you see on the left, oh, who cares? You can have Oakland, who cares? Yeah, who cares? Doesn't make any difference. Glitches, randomly switching votes from one party to another. It always goes in the same direction. No difference whatsoever. No, I don't get mad for asking for the link. I get mad because I posted everything where it was easily to see. I read directly from the article. I showed where the article was from. But fine, I posted the link. What's up, Milo? Right. I've talked about the need to reach out to... No, you didn't go away to get your link and was torn apart. I specifically read links. I asked, you didn't know how to post a link, apparently. Where do I post it? And I made fun of you for that because it is silly. I'm talking to you here, but I don't know where to put stuff so you can see it. And then when other people put this stuff and I read it, you're like, oh, I reposted it. Play it now. Play it. You won't even play it straight from the horse's mouth. If you leave and I answered your question or I answered your point, it's not incumbent upon me to re-answer it. No one argued with you for presenting proof. We argued with you because you didn't know how. Yeah, we get it. Whose username? What it is you people you want links provided for things that are common knowledge. I get it. I provided it. Fine. Okay, you read the link now, right? Where's the link wrong? Are you gonna? Oh, is that troubling? Is it troubling that a computer glitch in the software that was used in 31 states switched votes from one party to the other? Is that troubling? Well, Natalie, if Natalie wanted me to see something, I told her 3 times. Post it on the chat. I'll try to work on that, Milo. I don't know how to. Yeah, it's just 31 states. Who cares? No need to worry about it. So what we have today from the hypocritical standard of the left, they had no problem with the Democrats spying on Trump for the exact same things that Joe Biden's doing. Logan Act violation. No problem whatsoever. They're totally cool with that. It would be inappropriate to, listen into Biden's team's calls and unmask them to the press and have the FBI interview them without their lawyers while they're holding the transcripts in an attempt to entrap them to get them to lie. That would be terrible. Now, it was fine when they did that to Trump and to Flynn. That was perfectly fine. No problem whatsoever. No problem with the Democrats refusing to accept the election in 2016. No problem whatsoever. Mark, I could be as positive. I was positive earlier in the video. I'm very positive. I enjoy pointing out the stupidity of so many people on the left. But it's fine by me. I could choose to talk to the chat or not if I want. The reason I choose to is because it's so easy to make these people look so dumb and so hypocritical that it's fun to do. Is Trump meeting with agents of hostile foreign countries? Maybe. He's a president, so why would that have a difference? Again, I provided evidence from Ben Rhodes showing that that's exactly what Joe Biden's doing, reaching out. And the process worked apparently without regard to politics. This is Aldrich from that article I posted. A Republican city clerk supervised a vote that wrongly gave the victory to a Democrat, after which a Democrat county clerk staff caught the air and requested the correction from Republican city clerk, handing the win to the Republican. The Free Press has published 2 stories regarding the problem with voting. In both cases, a Republican clerk was responsible for the error, and in this case, it was a Democrat who fixed the error. And was there an error or not? Is Biden meeting with representatives of the Kremlin and talking about sanctions and lying about it? I don't know. I guess we have to spy on him to find out, right? Makes sense. He never talked about sanctions. That's a lie on your point. We have this. We have the transcript. Never once did he mention sanction. He talked about diplomats being expelled. Never once mentioning sanctions. You're promulgating a lie again, but that's no surprise. I'm talking about things I know about. Show me in the transcript of Flynn where he mentioned sanctions. Go ahead. Yeah, Catalina says, I've seen Democrats come forward concerned about anomalies. Yeah, Tariq Nasheed came forward, the big Democrat, and said, yeah, this is obviously frauds. Why didn't Trump and Republicans fix the election system when they had the majority? Look, you won't get any. Why didn't they fix tech censorship? I agree. There was a lot they didn't do. And Republicans weren't the one trying to change voting systems 3 months out of an election for no reason. That's the Democrats. That's who did that. Prove it, Mark Gaffey. Show me where Flynn talked about sanctions in his transcript. Post the link. Because they didn't. Mike Flynn said, this is what Mike Flynn said, paraphrasing. He said, hey, Kislyak, I understand that you'll have to respond, but we're just asking you to hold back on that response until we're in office so you can deal with us. That's what he said. He said, don't harm the American people. That was Flynn's big. No, Mark, and again, I love this appeal to authority. You don't know anything about how this stuff happens. It's my field. I know. Okay, it's your field. Can you explain to me why it's inappropriate for a transition team to reach out to a country that they think is going to be hostile to them and say, hey, don't be hostile? Explain to me why that should be illegal. Can you? Now, we had John Kerry, for example, when Trump pulled out of the Iran deal. John Kerry was over in Iran talking to them, a hostile foreign power. Were you claiming Logan Act violations there? If it turns out that Joe Biden's talking to hostile countries like China, if he's talking to China saying, hey, when we get in, maybe we're going to do something with this trade war, that would be the same thing, right? Maybe we'll release sanctions. Right, we get it. So they picked up the calls. He says if they're already spying on someone and they pick you up, then they'll pick you up. That doesn't mean they have to unmask you. That doesn't mean that they have to then investigate you for Logan Act violations that they knew were garbage. So let's do it. We have an admission from Ben Rhodes that the Biden team is talking to foreign powers right now. We have an admission. That's clear-cut Logan Act violation, according to Joe Biden. So why shouldn't he be charged? And that's right, Catalina. She says Republicans fought Trump too. Wake up. Yes. It's not Republican versus Democrat. It's establishment versus the people. He didn't lie, one. Flynn never lied. And secondly, fine. Then let's interview all of Biden's people without lawyers. Why did they interview him if they had the transcript? What is there a need to interview with someone if you know every word they said? You're holding the transcript. You know there was nothing illegal done in the transcript, yet you're going to interview him for possible crimes? Why is that? Why does it only ever happen to people connected to Trump? We don't see that with people. Let's see it with Joe Biden. We have an admission from Joe Biden's team. They're talking to foreign powers, so let's get all the transcripts, and then we'll barge in and interview them without their lawyer present, right? Seems fair. And if they have any slip up, if they say, I don't remember, that's what Flynn said, I don't remember, okay, then they're arrested. No, he didn't lie. He admitted because they tried to go after his son. Again, I love the leftists that will say things all the time like the police are systemically racist and they force confessions out of people to say, well, Mike Flynn, who they threatened his son, if he didn't plead guilty, so therefore he pled guilty, therefore he's guilty. Meanwhile, we had the actual Department of Justice throw out the case because they said there was no evidence of it. That's right, Epic, because he was a Trump loyalist and they were working to isolate Trump. That's exactly it. So, anyways, done talking to the left-wingers here because I have to wrap up. But I don't mind talking to them. Of course, as always, the invitation's on for them to come debate me. They won't. So I asked everyone today. They won't because they know. They have no problem with the double standard at all. The same people that called you a racist and terrible, and they're saying they are going to make a list of Trump supporters, they're saying, but you should come, now's the time to come together. Now's the time to come together. The same people that were screaming and wailing at the sky when Hillary lost in 2016 are like, look how salty Trump supporters are. I haven't seen any of that. The same people that were telling us, oh, there's no riots, or after the election, we have to board up because Trump supporters, there could be riots. They know full well that it was Biden supporters the whole time. They know it. They absolutely know it. Natalie, please wrap. Like the insanity of you want me to wrap up? Yeah, because I'm forcing you to be here. You can just click that little X at the top of your screen, and then you don't have to hear me anymore if that's what you want. I'll talk as long as I want. I'll probably go to 10. Whose name is in any way says there's no good faith discussion because he's an idiot. That's why he would think that. He says I deflected, then projected it onto me, and then started throwing insults when I called it out. No, what I did was showed that we knew there was fraud. Even you knew there was fraud. Therefore, it was unjust for the Democrats and the media to claim there is no fraud going into the election. I never claimed you said there is no fraud. I said the fact that you're someone who's not a Trump supporter who said there absolutely will be fraud proves that the Democrats knew there was going to be fraud. Right, you are an idiot. That's right. What point does that prove? That you're an idiot? Yes. It doesn't matter what the position you presented is. This is what leftists want to do, by the way. First off, you're probably disingenuous. I guarantee if I could see, you're an anonymous tough guy, so I can't see everything you posted. But I guarantee if I could, you would have been posting about the Russia stuff for 4 years. I guarantee it. Guaranteed. But I have to pretend you're like, I never said. Litanies of Democrats now that pushed for the fraudulent investigation into Trump over Russia, that pushed for the fraudulent investigation over Flynn. Now when you say, okay, let's hold the same standards to the other side, they say, oh, I never pushed for that. That wasn't me. Oh, I didn't do that. Litany of people that were saying that the 2016 election was suspect. Now saying, I never said that. Litany of people that said, oh, there's not going to be fraud. There won't be fraud. Mail-in ballots totally securing. There's no fraud. Now saying, I never said there would be no fraud. That's it. That's what they say every time. Oh, no. Who was it? No one said it. No one was calling Trump supporters right. Everyone, like I was in 2016 as a leftist, I was saying it's time to come together. That's what I was saying. Oh, you too? Oh, and you too? Oh, all of you? Yeah, the left was all saying to come together. It wasn't us. So no, it wasn't us. It wasn't us. We weren't talking about Russia. It wasn't us. So it's time for you all to let that stuff go. It wasn't me. So one, most of you are just lying. No, I can't prove that you yourself are lying, but it's irrelevant of what your opinion is. If I say, well, actually, this is what I think about this, and you say, yeah, but that's not what Trump said, and I'm focused on what Trump said, who cares my opinion then? If Trump said it. That's what I'm saying to you. Me and you, whose username, are nobodies, basically. What did the people in control of the Democratic Party said? Fraud, it's incredibly secure. They're still, if you go to Twitter, all of the tweets that are, they're blocking. The first thing it says, or not blocking, but they're putting a warning on. When you click it, it says, election fraud is very rare and blah, 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 blah. That's still what they're going with. That was the point they were making the whole time. Oh, it almost never, they're fraud. It almost never happens. Now everyone's admitting, well, of course there's fraud in every election. Show proof of fraud. Go watch the video when we're done. Talked about it. Right. They want 100% smoking. I told you, as I've done every show I've done for 3-4 days now, I do not have 100% proof there was fraud. I also don't have 100% proof that OJ killed his wife, but we know he did. All of the evidence speaks to the preponderance that is by and far most likely what happened. The same here. I went through the mathematic evidence that showed it. We didn't even talk about things like Benford's Law, but we showed the mathematic evidence of the ratio from Republican to Democrat voters and mail-out ballots, how it's a straight line in every state except in these swing states, and then it inexplicably jumps for Biden at certain points. We went through the fact that they kept poll watchers out of places like Philly, and that according to the U.S. State Department, that is a sign of election fraud when they look at other countries. We went through the fact that they stopped counting ballots for no reason in the middle of the night, and according to U.S. officials, stopping ballots counts in certain areas and then restarting is a sign of potential election fraud. We went through the fact that Fox News and other media places coordinated to make it seem like that this was okay and there was nothing going on by calling places like Arizona inexplicably, which still may go to Trump. They called it the night of the election. Then there are all sorts of allegations of actual poll workers that have sworn affidavits to a court involved in a lawsuit, at least in Michigan, showing that they saw anomalies such as ballots coming in past the due date. They were instructed to cure ballots even though they weren't allowed. Now, I can't speak to whether or not they are true, but those are sworn affidavits that people make. And then, in addition to that, we could see that the Democratic Party said that it was election interference and it stole the election for 12 Russian trolls to post on Pokemon Go and Facebook in 2016. But now we have almost the entirety of Facebook, Twitter, Silicon Valley, the mainstream media, that were all in for Joe Biden and against Donald Trump. That's 100% proven. Professor Robert Epstein said that in this election alone, Google had the potential to swing 16 million votes. But of course, the left doesn't care. The Biden supporters don't care. As long as it's on our side, we're okay with the tech censorship. As long as it's on our side, we're okay with the press intentionally bearing stories that are critical of Joe Biden while presenting any garbage they could find about Donald Trump. We're okay with that. I said that the election was stolen before we even got to Election Day. If we believe the Democrats here that are on this board, here's what they believe. There was no fraud. Okay. Or there was limited fraud. Fine. So what that means is that Joe Biden, a man who couldn't get 100 people at his rally, who basically had no policy positions that he could articulate properly, well, he had some, but not many, who contradicted himself, who yelled at his own supporters, calling them lying dog-faced pony soldiers, who could barely speak half the time he was speaking, he says, who was the least active presidential campaign in the history of the country, as far as I know, who called a lid on his debate or his schedule more days than not in the final month. If the mainstream media, the tech companies, the FBI, and other organizations that were all in the tank for him could drag him across the finish line, they could do that any person they want. Which means if you're a real progressive, and the irony is so many of you on the left here, like you're going to be like, oh, I'm a progressive. I want a real progressive. You think they're going to give them a chance? You think that's going to happen? You better hope they agree with you. You better hope that the media and the CIA and the tech companies agree with you. Better hope. Because they could drag anyone across the finish line. Oh, Lord, the rally argument. That's degrading to yourself, hon. Right. Also it is. It's just, yeah, challenging people to do push-ups that asked about the corruption. So, all right, I'm going to be wrapping up here. Does anyone have any more specific? Can you answer questions about corruption with your son? You're fat. I challenge you to a push-up contest. That guy. More votes than Barack Obama. No, they pick, you missed it, Huey. The left's take on here is Trump one time said Belgium was a good city. Right? He slipped up and said that, so that proves that was a big point for them. They'll ignore the billion gaffes that Joe Biden had. I almost went from crying to laughing. Oh my God. I'm close to crying. Yeah, I'm not close to crying. But again, Again, you see the left project. That's all they could do. Notice the memes they're coming up with crying Republicans. They can't find any. So they're just taking their own crying Democrats in 2016 and putting MAGA hats on them because that's all they're capable of. Oh, wow. D-Live's hitting it off. Yeah. Thanks, man. Whoever rated me on D-Live. Thanks so much. I prefer that people watch me on D-Live because they don't actually censor you. I like doing Twitch as well because you get to see a lot of these characters come out. So I'm not saying that rallies are the only indication, Natalie. That's not the point I'm making whatsoever. I'm saying there was just no enthusiasm. We couldn't even get people on the Democrat side to come out for Obama rallies. The point is, by no means, even most Biden voters will say, we don't think Biden was a very good candidate. We voted for him because. If they could drag him across the finish line, they didn't ask him any difficult questions. They buried stories for him. If they could drag him across the finish line, name me a candidate that they wouldn't be able to do so. Almost any candidate's going to be better than Joe Biden. So if they could drag Joe Biden across the finish line, of course they could drag anyone. And I get that you're okay with that right now because Orange Man bad. I get it. That's fine. But it will bite you. It will, because eventually you'll have a candidate that's not the preferred establishment choice, and they won't have a chance because the establishment won't let them. And then you'll realize, like maybe you're a Jill Stein fan, you'll be like, oh man, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie, like they did to him in 2016. Then you'll realize, oh geez, maybe I shouldn't have cheered on a system where our press just acted as a propaganda tool for one of the party's candidates. Maybe I shouldn't have cheered that on. Maybe I shouldn't have cheered on a system where the FBI and the CIA put their thumb on the scales of who got elected by having corrupt investigations into one candidate, etc. Maybe I shouldn't have cheered for that. Maybe I shouldn't have cheered for investigating Flynn for Logan Act violations when it's clear that that's absolutely normal for transition teams to talk to foreign leaders because Joe Biden's doing that right now. Maybe I shouldn't have cheered for that. Bernie Sanders wants to break up big tech. Yeah, he had a lot of success, didn't he? Right? You voted for Joe Biden so that you can endorse Bernie Sanders' idea of breaking up big tech. I cheered just to see Republican meltdowns and it paid off. Good enough for me. Good. I hope you're happy. Regardless of my disagreements with you, if I could bring you any sort of enjoyment, that's fine. I thought I was quite clear. I don't mind people saying that I'm melting down. I'm not. This is probably less angry than I've been in videos for 3 years now. But that's fine. If you need to lie and say that you're seeing things that aren't reality to make yourself feel good, well, then you're a typical Democrat. Like, that's how you operate anyways. So, yeah, that's great. Republicans don't care about big tech monopoly. They take money from them. Totally agree. Jim Jordan will write a strongly worded letter to these tech monopolies. Absolutely agree. It was an incredible failure of Trump to not break up these tech monopolies, and certainly there are many Republicans that took money from them and intentionally did nothing to stop them. Absolutely agree. No disagreement from me here. Yep. That's exactly my point. It's so hard to get out of this paradigm of, well, it's Democrat versus Republican. People think they're having some big gotcha for me that it's like, well, wait a minute. If Republicans controlled the House, Senate, and presidency for 2 years, why didn't they do a lot of this stuff you're talking about? Yep, exactly. Exactly right. That's why if you watched my show yesterday, I was mocking the idea of supporting the establishment Republican Party because they're garbage. Just like the Democratic Party is garbage. They're going to promise a bunch of people a bunch of things and then they won't deliver. And then we'll get a choice between Kamala Harris or Nikki Haley in 2024, and neither of them will give two hoots about the average American people. That's what's going to happen. Yeah, Mike Lee, Republican in Google's pocket. Yep. How about I look up the facts about how much Trump benefited from the tax cuts? What does that have to do with anything? Trump certainly lost money by being in office, certainly. The tax cut helped median income earners. It even helped people making $25,000 or less. They received more money in their pocket. And agreed, Cataline. She says, I don't trust the left or right. That's why I like Trump. Thank you, Analyst PLZ. Also, I apologize for going too hard. I really do apologize for this. I shouldn't have called people idiots. That's not fair. So I do apologize for that. It is frustrating but I'm better than that. And so, yeah, I do apologize sincerely to Natalie, to whose name is it anyway, to anyone else. I should not call you idiots. It's not fair. I apologize for that. But, yeah, taxation is theft, basically. Look, let me be honest about my mood. I'm not happy that I think that the election was stolen, right? I'm not happy about that. But I have to remember, a lot of people on the left thought that the 2016 election was garbage. I disagree with them, but they thought it was garbage because of Russia or whatever. So when they were angry, I have to remember, they felt like me. It doesn't matter what the truth is when you're talking about how people feel in their emotions. So I should at least be able to empathize and understand, okay, my situation feeling-wise would be similar to those in 2016. Now, if I could be honest, I think I'm handling it much better than the majority of Hillary supporters. But I'm not melting down. I'm more angry because what I perceive as people disinterested in the double standards and the corruption. But I guess if you didn't believe there was corruption, you would look at it like it's just sour grapes, which is fine. So in that case, I can see where they're coming from. But that's it. As always, anyone on the left's welcome to come on and debate me. That's fine. It doesn't have to be a debate. It could be a discussion. It's a little tough on these morning shows because I also do a podcast. So my live stream's on Podbean right now. It's audio only, but it will be up on iTunes and Spotify later today. But let me admit where I was wrong today. Natalie came on and said, look, Trump said 3 times between July and August, if I lose, the election's rigged. She didn't prove that, but she proved the crux of that, which Trump did say they're going to rig the election so that I lose. It's slightly different, but I will concede that the crux of what Natalie was saying was true. Natalie now says, well, no, they didn't. The big banks and the big business profited into the millions. The stats show that the middle class categorically declined. That's not true. From middle to lower, I appreciate your acceptance, by the way. We need to accept. That's not true at all. That's just fundamentally not true. All groups of people, including medium wage earners, actually saved money on the tax cut. You might say, well, actually, the wealthier saved more. Okay, but that was still money in the pockets of everyone. But yeah, someone who hates both candidates is absolutely welcome here. Someone who's a Biden supporter is welcome here. I don't care. But yeah, you don't have to worry about that. What's up, Millionaire? How's it going? Yeah, I some of my best friends are people that hate Trump. I don't care. I have them on the show. It's no problem. But right, like Hate Dot says, I'm not a political person. I vote for Trump despite both Democrats and Republicans. That's how I feel. Look, my dream election was 2016 was Bernie versus Trump. I despise socialism. Almost all of the domestic policies of Bernie Sanders I was against. But I believed he was someone that the establishment feared. So if it was Trump versus Bernie, it was like either way the establishment was going to be upset with that. And I was okay with that. Now, I think Bernie sold out, but in fairness, a lot of leftists might think Trump sold out. I don't think he did. I think that he failed, but I don't think he sold out. His failure was trusting people around him. He said he was going to drain the swamp, and let's be honest, a lot of the people he put around him were from the swamp. And so the fact that the corruption still persists, of course. But to me, there's only one issue that matters, corruption. Giving the American people a voice. So I would vote for someone that was a socialist who I thought honestly wanted to give the American people a voice versus someone who agreed with me on economic policy, but I thought was just an establishment goon. I would vote for the former. I would. That's how I feel. They screwed Bernie out of my feeling, this is just my feeling. Can I prove this? No. I feel like in 2016, this is what they said. Look, the establishment said, they were like, look, populism is rising on the left or the right. So we need to have a pressure release valve. So here's what we'll do. We'll screw Bernie out of the primary, which they did. And so we'll have Hillary Clinton, and she'll go against Donald Trump. She'll crush Donald Trump. Everyone gets to feel like, hey, we had our little populist thing, and then it's back to business as normal. What they didn't expect was for Trump to actually be able to win. They assumed Hillary, they believed their own lies. Hillary has a 99% chance of winning. They will not make that mistake again. They'll make sure that they rig it more. And there's a huge amount of ways they can. They could rig primaries. They could rig it through the party system, which, believe it or not, it's nepotism. It's like, I know, I've ran for office as a Republican. It's who you know. So if you're an outsider coming in, they find ways to make sure you don't get your foot in the door. And even if you do get your foot in the door, there's all sorts of things they could do. They could use the tech companies and the media to push the candidates they want. They could actually have coin flips. Remember? There were coin flips this time where Biden's winning these coin flips in the primary. They could keep people like Tulsi Gabbard off the debate stage, even though she had more electoral votes than people like Kamala Harris. It isn't all just, oh, well, they could rig the votes that day. There's so many things they do leading up to that, they won't even have to rig the votes. And technology and the control of information is getting more sophisticated every day, which means that they'll be more able to shape the thought process of the average person. That's why it should frighten each and every one of us. If you see all of these institutions line up for one candidate, you should scratch your head. Why do I trust them? And people on the left know this. They don't trust the corporations. They don't trust the pharmaceutical companies. They don't trust the FBI or the CIA, at least they used to not. They don't trust the media companies, at least they used to not. They were skeptical. That was one of the things I loved about my friends on the left. When George Bush was in office, they had a healthy skepticism of the establishment, of authority. Now it's totally gone. Every time you talk to most of these leftists, they're like, but the FBI says, but the media says. Total blind faith trusting in these institutions. But at the same time, they're telling you, well, there's institutional racism. There's institutional bigotry. So they trust the very people running the institutions that they claim are racist and bigots and only care about the wealthy. So you should question, why are they all, if I don't trust any of these institutions and they're all backing one person, all of them, like 98% backing one side, why is that? If the Democrats are really about taking money away from the wealthy and dispersing it to the poor, why are the wealthiest Americans endorsing the Democrats? Why would that be? If this revolution's about ending systemic racism, why are all the corporations and stuff that have engaged in racism supporting it? Well, they're just doing it for lip service. Okay, are you sure that they're not going to get away with it? If we want change and we're upset with the establishment, why are you voting for the guy that's been in Washington for 47 years? If you want peace and you want to end these wars, why are you voting for the guy that all the neocons responsible for the Iraq war are now supporting? Dick Cheney's wife, George W. Bush, McCain and his family, Bill Kristol, Max Boot, all the neocons that push us into war. Now they're supporting Joe Biden. But my friends on the left are like, well, Joe Biden, he'll be a candidate of peace. What? Meanwhile, say what you will about Trump. He had historic Middle East peace deals. No one cares. That was the issue. When I got into college, when I first started to look at politics, the one issue that I cared about and my friends on the left cared about was these wars. The Iraq war was illegitimate. We're tired of sending poor people from our country to kill people in other countries when it's undeserved. We're tired of it. Absolutely tired of it. Now those same people, 16 short years later, are like, well, if you want to bring troops home, you're a xenophobe, you're a racist. We have to leave the troops there. And all the while the neocons are like, yes, exactly, yes. More troops, yeah. We can't bring them home. remember, we were told the big flaw of, remember all the things we were told that Donald Trump was going to do terrible. Oh, he's going to get us in all these wars. Oh my God, his finger on the nuclear button, it's going to be a disaster. First president in 20 years that didn't involve us in a new war. Oh, he's going to lock up gay people. Did nothing whatsoever negatively to affect gay people, and in fact pointed more gay people to positions of diplomats than any president before him. He's the first president in history that didn't oppose gay marriage as he entered office. Barack Obama can't say that. Oh, well, black people, it's going to be so bad for black people. Record unemployment for black people. People of color. All of this stuff, this boogeyman stuff that Trump was going to do, none of it came to fruition. None of it. And we're supposed to just ignore it. I mean, that's why I'm trying, when I say we should reach out to people on the left. Am I doing a great job? No, not necessarily. Trump put a military ban on trans people. What's that have to do with gay rights? Trans is a totally different issue. If you're diabetic, there's also a ban on you serving in branches in the military because of the medications you need to take. Trans people have to take a litany of medications that would be difficult to get to the front line. So? I don't recall the big movement of let diabetic people in the military, bigoted against diabetic people, bigoted. I don't recall that. Where was the left on that? Right, and I understand. Who's your name anyway? Says trans is under the LGBT umbrella. Also nice to conflate it with diabetes. Right, because the interesting pigeonhole that in trying to control the narrative, what they try to do is tell you, well, being trans isn't an illness. Well, if it's not an illness, then what exactly are trans people going through? The very nature of what trans people go through is they feel that they're not in the correct body. That is an illness of some sort that requires medical care. If it wasn't an illness of some sort or something like that, it would not require medical care. Yes, it's an illness that requires medication. The reason that diabetics aren't allowed in the military is because the difficult access of managing their conditions when you're on the front lines. The same would be true of trans people. That's not delegitimizing trans people. That's not trying to offend them. It's just the truth. Hormone injections and insulin injections aren't any different in size. Right. They don't want diabetic people in the military either. Exactly my point. Yes, you're proving my point. It's not that they're being bigoted. There's all sorts of medical conditions that we don't allow people to serve in the military, and it sucks. I'm telling you right now, I'm sure there are trans people out there that could be awesome soldiers that would wipe the floor with me, right? That really care about this country. But there's also diabetics that you could say the same thing of. There's also asthmatics that you could say the same thing of. There's all sorts of, there are people that you have to have a certain amount of vision to serve in certain, or a quality of vision to serve in certain branches of the military. I'm sure there are people that require a lot of vision apparatuses, thick glasses and things like that currently we don't allow in the military that would be fantastic soldiers. You might say it's a strategic blunder to not allow them, but I don't think it's bigoted. Right, they don't want fat people in the army. Exactly. The point is this. It's clear that I don't even want to, I'll talk about the fraud. If you go back and you watch the beginning of this video, I talk about some math stuff that I think potentially you haven't seen that's evidence of fraud. You can go back when the video is done and watch that, right? It's a blanket ban, but the same is true of diabetes. We have blanket bans on that. There are people with less severe conditions of diabetes, right? It's hard to not have a blanket ban. It's hard to come up with a policy. That's the truth of it. In a totally utopian world, even with the law, when it came to what people are allowed to engage in this and what people aren't, you would go on a case-by-case basis. But that's not the way rules and regulations work. We can't do that. So yeah, it's going to look like a flat ban, of course. But I talked about the fraud. But the case that I'm trying to make is, let's assume for a second that there wasn't election day fraud. We have to listen to the Democrats that told us for 4 years that Russian interference in the form of 12 Russian trolls and releasing some emails to WikiLeaks, that was enough to steal the election? That was worth being worried about? But the entirety almost of the mainstream media, of the tech companies, of the intel agencies, of academia, of the entertainment industry, all being in the bag for Joe Biden, that's not something to worry about. That's fine. The double standards that we see, we're constantly told to ignore reality. Oh, there could be riots. Trump supporters could riot. We know who was rioting. We all know it. But you can't have an honest conversation with these people. I'm not talking about everyone on the left. I'm talking about the people in the media, in politics, in the Democratic Party. You have to pretend, well, there's bad people on both sides. We knew why Washington, D.C. was boarding up. It's 90% Democrat in D.C. They weren't worried about Trump supporters burning down the cities. We know who it was. Everybody knows it. But the entirety of our narrative shaping class tells us the opposite of the truth. Oh, no, there's no problem here. No problem at all. We watch cities burning down and they're like, what violence? What? Mostly peaceful. What are you talking about? I will guarantee you that, let's say the courts rule that it's not Trump. They say, no, we don't see enough evidence of fraud. It's Joe Biden's election. Let's say that happens. Guaranteed you, and I'm not endorsing this, I'm predicting it because I'm totally against political violence. Totally. But I'll guarantee you there will be some Trump supporters that enact in violence. And the media and the Democrats will be like, look at this. Look at the Trump supporters. Look at what they're doing. That's horrible. Are they going to say mostly peaceful? Almost every Trump supporter is being peaceful. They're having rallies and stuff, but it's mostly peaceful. Are they going to say that? No, that's not what they're going to say. They'll look at the violence, as they should, by the way. As they should. But you can see the clear double standard. The people that told you for 4 years that you were a racist scumbag or that you were uneducated, that you were terrible, now telling you, oh, we got to come together. We need to unite. Joe Biden's telling us we need to unite, while AOC is saying we need to put lists of Trump supporters so we can blackball them. Has Joe Biden came out and condemned that? The great uniter? Has he? No. Didn't see that. So that's the problem with trusting the establishment. And it's going to get worse as far as their ability to control a narrative, right? I mean, we haven't even got to, it's conspiratorial, but let's be honest. As technology increases in deep fake technology and things like that, they'll literally be able to just take a candidate's face or voice and put a video out that seamlessly looks like a real video. Maybe it'll show some sort of corruption. How will we ever know? Prove it's fake. That's what we'll be told. Yeah, I don't know what the problem with DLive is. It sucks. Because I like DLive, so sorry about that. But anyways, that's where we're at today. So I do have some work to get to today. But yeah, I apologize if I was calling people idiots and stuff. That's not good form. I should know better than that. I sincerely apologize. I think I was right, but I do sincerely apologize. And it's childish, and I shouldn't do it. So I am sorry for getting caught up in the moment. Look, the most important thing, I don't care if you're a Biden or a Trump supporter, stay safe, right? Take care of yourself and your family. Your personal integrity and stuff is more important than anything else. We're all going to die at some point. I'll fight for the country. I will. I'll keep pushing forward ahead no matter what. But, that's the most important thing. So, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. Maybe DLive, because I'm streaming to so many platforms, maybe that's why it's having trouble. So maybe what I'll start doing is every other day streaming to YouTube and Twitch, and then the next day streaming to DLive. So everyone that follows me on Twitch and YouTube, if you want to keep following me, maybe check out my DLive channel. I won't do that this week, but maybe I'll give a week's notice or something, and we'll see how that goes. So thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate each and every one of you. I really am. Humbled that people want to listen to me. Any donations are appreciated. I can't see if people donated on DLive or Twitch, but if so, thank you so much. I could use the money for my channel, but if I don't get any money, I'll still be doing the channel. And whose name is it anyway? Again, apologize for calling you an idiot. I shouldn't resort to the same tactics you do, so I do apologize for that. I should know that that's what you're going to do, and I shouldn't sink to that level. So, all right. Thanks so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. We will see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. here. As always, have a good one.